Toll Brothers. I'll promote him to panelist. He's one of the I think we're live on YouTube right now.
Great.
Hey, Brian.
Hi, Brian, you're muted. We're live and we're waiting on John and Alex.
Yeah.
There's Alex.
All right, promote the panelist. And he should be on this side now.
And Jonathan's there. We should be good. Hi, all.
All right, and then I know joined by John as well.
Maritas, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Yes, I can.
Just so you know, we're on live,
I knew
and
that, yes.
we're started recording, so the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is an extremely interesting, hopefully an important night in Summit. I want to thank everyone who has joined our Zoom meeting. I'm very grateful to you, for all of you who have taken the time to learn about the Broad Street West redevelopment project. Members of council, members of the planning board, residents, and professionals have been working on this for more than a few years. It all began back with the master plan in 2016. It is indeed a large undertaking and one that requires vision. When I consider decisions that other mayors and councils have had to make that impact quality of life during necessary times of growth, I always think back to the Great Depression and how the Summit Council at that time had a choice to spend the money to submerge the railroad tracks through town or not. Imagine how different our town would be with trains running through its center at ground level. It was a significant expense during a time of crisis, of economic crisis. But that council had the vision to understand that the investment then would greatly benefit us now. The Broad Street West redevelopment is this kind of project and extremely important for our community. While our economy is certainly in better shape than it was back then, these decisions are big and will generate the tax revenues that our municipality needs. One difference is that this investment will not be at taxpayers' expense. And importantly, the project will bring an improved dynamic to our downtown living, working, and shopping experiences. Council and I are extremely pleased with the work that has been done so far, and we look forward to sharing the proposed concepts with you this evening and answering your questions. This is a process, and we really do want to hear from you. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have questions, and we were happy to answer them. Thank you very much. And I would now like to introduce Annie Hindenlang, who is with Topology, who's the planner that has been guiding us through this process.
Thank you, Mayor. And great opening remarks. Like, that's tough to follow, but I'll do my best. I am very excited about tonight. We've been, Topology has been on the journey with you all for this site since the master plan update. And it's not very often you get to carry visions through this far. So we're really excited to finally have a chance to get back in touch with you all. Unfortunately, not in person, but maybe soon, and update you on what's been going on, because the last time we probably touched base with you all was December of 2019. So there's been a lot of hard work over that time, and you're going to see that shortly through this presentation. What we're going to do is myself and my colleague Thun, who has been working with me on this project, we're going to go through some context and background. For all of you that have seen this a million times, I apologize, but I never want anyone to be lost in looking into this for the first time. So we'll give you some context and background to catch you up to where we are. And then we're going to turn it over to the development team, who are the other three panelists you see here, Brian and John and Alex. And they're going to walk you through what is a current concept plan for the project. And I know that many, many times throughout outreach, you all asked me, what is it going to look like? What is it going to look like? And we're like, we're not there yet. We don't know. but we're finally there. We're finally have some ideas. We have something to show you that we need your feedback on and your guidance on, which is why we're having this Q&A session. And we want to hear your thoughts, concerns, excitement, good things, bad things, to make sure we stuck true to what you told us and continue moving along in this process, because there's still many steps after this, but we're happy we made it here. And Tan, if you can start sharing your screen.
Yes, I will. You're all able to see it?
It's just like not in presentation view.
Yeah.
Oh, and lastly, and importantly, once the developers are done, if you raise your hand, we'll open up the mic for you all to ask questions, comments, and we're going to stick to the 3 minutes as of right now. Maybe depending on how many people are participating, we'll see how that goes. But 3 minutes that you typically have at council for public comment and question, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions. And if we don't have the answer yet, we'll tell you. But we have a lot of answers tonight. So. This is the redevelopment area that we've talked about many, many times. It is adjacent to the green that you all love and are so familiar with, and the train station in downtown. It's on the southern side of the train tracks. And basically, as you see right here, it's wrapping around the senior housing building, the Vito Gallo building, and includes largely and mostly publicly owned parking lots. And that's one of the main reasons that this area was pursued. Go ahead. So what is redevelopment planning? I know these are very wordy, but this is going to be up on the website after this for people who can't attend or maybe want to follow back up. I will summarize things as best as I can, but I want to make sure there's enough context for anyone who checks this later. Redevelopment planning is a very special tool that New Jersey has developed that lives in its own legal realm and has its own attorneys, engineers, planners, architects. It allows a municipality to take a very strong leadership position in reinvesting in areas that they think could benefit from additional stability and growth, and at the same time try to address some existing community concerns. Usually, if you think of the planning board and zoning board, that's traditional municipal land use planning. This is different. This is led and guided by the public and their representatives, elected officials, to make sure that a particular site that has been troublesome can be redeveloped and reused if it meets certain criteria that necessitate reinvestment. And in order to do anything with redevelopment planning, to even talk to a developer, to even start working on the site, you have to have a redevelopment plan in place. That replaces what you think of as traditional zoning when you think of, downtown corridors or residential high rise or something like that. It replaces the zoning and it creates a general framework for what development can go there and tries to create, additional public improvements. Go ahead. This is to give you a little bit more of details on the site itself. Overall, it's 16 lots, 10.1 acres in total. Of that, over half, 6.3 acres, are owned by the city. There's 11 owners, and currently, in totality, it is assessed at almost 10.5 million, which that's one indicator of the parking lots there, because there's not much improvement value, and there's a lot of publicly owned land that's not generating revenue for the city. And if does the next slide have the buildings labeled?
No, the next slide goes into the timeline of the Broad Street West redevelopment.
So if you can just circle where the post office is, just so we can give everybody a little context real quick.
Yeah, the post office is right here.
So
Can you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Okay,
I
cool.
can. So the post office is in the top right corner. In the bottom right corner of the redevelopment area is the library, and then all the way to the left is City Hall. So that to kind of give you, triangulate around what area we're talking about. Go ahead. So we want to just give you a little context in terms of how we got here. We had a wonderful time working on your master plan reexamination. It was a very considerate, one of the best attended public engagement processes that we've been a part of. And, we always tell everyone about it and we use all of our pictures from it because it was just a great time. But you identified some considerate issues and opportunities that you all would like to see addressed under the re-exam with planning efforts and growth and investment as you move forward. And the master plan itself, one of the things you identified is this area to be considered for redevelopment. In 2017, shortly thereafter, we did an analysis to determine whether or not the properties met the statutory requirements to be designated an area in redevelopment, which is a pretty strict, very detailed, deep process that you've seen our report, many pages long. The planning board confirmed it as an area in need of redevelopment, and council designated it in 2017. In order to create the redevelopment plan, which I mentioned earlier, which is that guidance, the parameters for the area so that things could start moving forward, we did significant amount of public outreach specifically tailored at this area. It was focused on what kind of public improvements, what kind of housing, what kind of commercial, what kind of architecture do you want to see? We went to the high school, we had many public meetings, we engaged with different stakeholder groups, including the Housing Authority, the library, the YMCA, the downtown, the downtown district group. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it right now.
Summit Downtown Inc.
Thank you. I kept wanting to say it. Thank you. And, everyone was super, engaged, had a lot to say, had been considering these things for a long time. And so throughout 2018 and 2019, we developed the redevelopment plan, which you can also find on the city's website, which allowed us to create a plan that we could then seek private interest for, which you can go next slide. Which happened over 2018 to 2019. There was 2 rounds of solicitations, 3 interviews per solicitation. We ended up, so I think we started out with about 14, and by the end we were down to 3 contenders. And who you see today on the call with us are the team that was vetted and chosen as the one most likely and most able to meet the vision of the redevelopment plan and thus the residents' idea of what they'd like to see there. They were designated in December of 2019. And what that basically means is that the city formally recognized that they would be negotiating, working with this development team exclusively over a certain period of time to investigate and develop a concept plan and hopefully a redevelopment project that is suitable for the public. And today, that's what we're looking at today is that first step, that concept plan. Throughout, we're set back a little bit with COVID as we're trying to kind of get reoriented and figure out how to meet and keep the process going. But throughout 2020 and earlier this year, there's been significant design analysis. There's been some financial analysis. There's been parking analysis, lots of back and forth between a steering committee, which is made up of elected officials, planning board members of the public, and the professionals that represent the city, as well as a couple of the directors in the city. They've been helping guide this process to make sure that, everything's gone through them and been vetted so that whatever we showed you today in a concept plan would hopefully be something that is acceptable and wonderful. And then today we're here to present those draft concept plans to you that reflect that committee guidance, all of your feedback over the many years that it's been, and see what you think. Right now it's at a programmatic level, and what that means is, I've given many metaphors over the past years with these presentations, but there is going to be retail about this much. There is going to be residential about this much. There's going to be open space about this much. So we have ranges and parameters, but to get to the specific numbers for each of those things, we have to make sure first that we have a concept and a project that you all are excited about, because it's really expensive to get down to that very, granular, fine details, and you don't want to waste anyone's time if it's not something that's appropriate. So we have some range. You'll have a very good idea of what it will look like. That's one of the things we're really interested in is your response to the aesthetics for sure, the public realm. But there's still a lot of details to come. Once we know that generally the public is good with the programmatic designs that they see today, then we'll start doing further analysis to get you those very specific numbers. Hopefully by September is what we're working towards, if all goes well. Go ahead. To summarize, like I said, for this plan, we had multiple public engagement processes. We showed up at your train station sometimes to bother you on your way home. We went to farmers markets. We talked to different businesses. We talked to engage with all the property owners in the area. And like I said, this has been a really enlightening and really well-guided and considerate process to date. There's some pictures from some of our events. And just to give you some context, one of the things we like to do is just make sure, try to remind people what's here and what's in the area. Some of the main things that are, besides for parking, is the firehouse that you're aware of the city has been working towards getting a new facility for and potentially relocating. There is the YMCA and the library. The developer will go more into that, but they've been working directly with both of those groups to incorporate and make sure that they've been considered and they'll be part of the overall project, not just neighbors, that they're going to benefit and be a part of the project. On the bottom left, you're standing on Broad Street across from the Housing Authority, and you can see the garage just over the tracks. And then on the bottom right is the Chestnut Street parking lot, which is next to St. Teresa's Memorial Hall. So there's a lot of visions. The plan itself has a lot of details. There's a lot of different things that we hoped and planned to achieve with this plan. But overall, the vision is that this redevelopment area is going to be a key catalyst for expanding and supporting the downtown, opening up different and new markets that maybe aren't available already, whether it's a type of retail or a type of residential unit, and having an area that is, centrally and strategically located next to the train station has a great opportunity for reinvestment and to kind of capitalize on those opportunities. But beyond that, this will enable the city to kind of approach growth in a smart way that is sustainable and considerate of, what the city is and what the city wants to be, and will allow it to make sure that that investment is done right in a way that will continue to support all the great things about Summit. The redevelopment plan itself, just to remind you, the main things that we heard over and over again throughout the public process was that they wanted the design itself to be context sensitive, to bridge the gap that currently is created by a lot of the parking lots between a very active, beautiful downtown and what is an active, beautiful residential area. So it needs to be appropriate and sensitive to that. Seeing this project as a neighborhood within itself, not to compete with the downtown. That was one thing we focused on over and over again, is don't cannibalize any of the business, find ways to get them more shoppers, more diners, more dental customers, and to not only support the downtown businesses, but increase transit ridership, which helps, get further improvements down the road for the train station, train service. Something that's sensitive to the existing infrastructure and traffic limitations, do not exacerbate any of the existing infrastructure, and if anything, improve it from what it is. Focus on sustainability and modern standards for construction. What you'll see today, we've heard loud and clear from many of the residents and from the Environmental Commission how important sustainability is to the work that they're doing and having really high standards for green buildings. And I think that the developer's been able to incorporate a lot of that, and they have experience doing that. And finally, we heard from all different ages, walks of life, types of different people in the city, that everybody wanted space for people to just enjoy downtown, to just sit and not have to buy something, not feel like you need to be run off, but to have a place to just hang out. And we heard that largely from middle schoolers and high schoolers and seniors around the area who are down in the downtown a lot, or live in the area. And it's about creating spaces that can meaningfully and appropriately support street activity. You're going to hear us talk about subdistricts a lot, and tonight we're going to focus on subdistricts 2 and 3. We broke the plan down into 4 different subdistricts just because they all have different identities and different visions for each one. The first one is the post office, including the 2 parking lots behind it. The second one is the parking lot between the YMCA and the library, and includes the YMCA and library. The third district includes the firehouse and some private properties and St. Teresa Memorial Hall. And then subdistrict 4 is City Hall and the properties that surround it on that block. Just to note, the developer has not been designated, and we're not currently showing, we're not considering or discussing right now any kind of development on subdistrict 4. We will be presenting on subdistrict 2 and 3 tonight, and then hopefully very soon be back to show you a little bit more details on subdistrict 1. As we, like I said, this is an iterative process where one builds on the other. So once we have a clear idea of what we're doing here, it moves to the next subdistrict. But it's going to allow for flexibility and phasing so that existing services and operations aren't interrupted too much throughout construction, because this is a multi-year project. Again, each of the districts had its own vision. Subdistrict 1 was, it's very important that it's a visual access point and something that attracts and encourages movement between the downtown and the redevelopment area itself. It does not have residential permitted in it currently, but it's seeking commercial space and structured parking to better manage all of the parking that is in the area and create some new opportunities. Subdistrict 2, which is again where the YMCA and the library are, is to keep, maintain, and enhance an attractive corridor along Maple. You have 2 great civic institutions there. Find a way to fill in that space between them that supports and enhances what's already there and is considerate of the architecture around it. And then lastly, again, because Subdistrict 4 is not being contemplated at this point, Subdistrict 3 is seen as the center or the hub of this new neighborhood that generates activity and creates new experiences and opportunities, like I said, that aren't currently available throughout Summit. One thing we want to know, just kind of let you all know, is we understand parking. Well, I don't know if it is a problem right now during COVID, but it was a problem, and it's interesting to see where it's going to go in the future. But we've used all pre-COVID numbers to understand parking demand, and for all of our modeling, we had a special consultant come in and look at the project with what is currently being proposed, this programmatic level, and to make sure that whatever they're proposing can be built, can be parked in a way that doesn't hurt the public and creates a better parking situation. And by having structured parking, and we want to just let you all know that from what we're showing you today, that the current and future needs should be able to be met with off-street parking based off of what we're going to be showing you today and in the coming future. So again, the mayor mentioned it, but I want to reiterate it. This is not a final step in the public process. This is not the final chance for you all to say anything. As needed over the summer and this month, we'll be refining the concept plans based off of feedback we hear. If we hear mostly positive things and that people like the direction we're going in, we're going to kind of take the numbers that may be like 10 to 15 and narrow it down to 13. And then that will allow us to do a fully accurate traffic and financial analysis, which I know that's another big concern the public has. So we're going to make sure that before we go too far down the process, those issues are addressed and appropriately. If the concept plan is acceptable, the traffic improvements or patterns show not to be detrimental, or they enhance the area, and it seems like a financially feasible and beneficial project for the city, Then we'd work all this into a redevelopment agreement. We'd like to then potentially discuss, based off of where the financial analysis ends up, pilots kind of generally with you and go over Subdistrict 1 concept plans. But we just wanted to let you all know that, the process is continuing. There's a lot to do. There's going to be more public hearings, and we're working towards, getting to a final conclusion. We know that a lot of people have fatigue with this project, and just because they're either excited to see something get done or just want to know what's happening. But we're getting there, and we're hoping by the end of the year to have a very clear direction and a clear project outlined for the city as it moves forward. All right, and now we're going to turn it over to the redevelopment team to give their presentation. And then once they're done, I'll take back over to field questions and comments.
Well, thank you to the mayor and to Annie. I plan to be brief, as you are both difficult acts to follow, and I apologize in advance if one of my offspring jumps on the line with us. My name is John Cortell. I'm a principal at L&M Development, and sadly only an Essex County, New Jersey resident. I have the pleasure of starting here. I'm going to speak first quickly, introduce my colleague Brian as part of as the preamble, and then introduce Alex Marlucci, who's going to walk through the imagery on slides that follow. Brian and I will reserve to interrupt Alex freely as he goes. Others I note, including Sam, James, Brad, Kyle, are likely participants here, having not made the cut as panelists, so you can't see their faces, but they are integral to our efforts here. We are engaging a number of resources available to us because we think this opportunity to add and celebrate the great city of Summit necessitates those resources. We want to run down options, and we want to overcome hurdles in order to successfully execute a vision I think we're all pretty excited about. On behalf of Brian, Alex, and our whole team, I think I can say that as we make this presentation today, we're thrilled in part because we're drawn to deals, transactions, sites, towns like this, where we get to work closely with the municipalities in question on properties that have community significance. We fully recognize that Summit's pretty great as it is, and what we'd like to do is celebrate its strengths and extend what makes it so strong. As part of this process, we don't take lightly that this is a dialogue. The mayor, Annie, and others among the leadership team have administered to a thorough and engaging process. And the process has generated some pretty great things. And I think we are glad to share what we think is the product of collaboration that honors thoughts and concerns expressed by community members during the process before we entered the fray, as well as, that may have come up in the process while we were a part of the dialogue and that have been communicated to us. That said, the current slide that's presented introduces the two entities that comprise our joint venture, the entity that is conditionally designated by the city for the development opportunity. So again, I represent L&M Development Partners, depicted on the left side of the page. L&M, founded in the mid-'80s, is probably the lesser known of the two enterprises depicted here. We have long been focused on the 5 boroughs of New York. Maybe that is a mistake for not having had the opportunity earlier to positively impact development in the space like this, like Essex County where I live. But we have, better late than never. We have accomplished a good deal already in New Jersey, having, among other things, brought life back to the Haynes department store in downtown Newark. A national landmark, this building sat empty for way too long. It's clear the city of Newark cared deeply for it. It has resonance with County of Essex folks, state of New Jersey folks. It has a presence greater than its property lines would suggest. We're an owner, builder, manager, and fund manager, and I think we celebrate public-private partnerships as a key component to successful development. Brian, at Toll, maybe Brian, you can do a little reminder for folks who Toll is.
Yes, thank you, John. Thank you for the great introduction for the team. I'll be brief, and for anyone who's not familiar, well, first I'm Brian Oos. I'm a director of acquisitions and development for Toll Brothers Apartment Living. Toll Brothers is a publicly traded company. We were founded in 1967. We've been public since 1986. We're a member of the Fortune 500. Among the various honors received over our history, one of the ones we're most proud of is being the #1 ranked home builder on Fortune magazine's World's Most Admired Companies lists for 6 years in a row. And we're currently active. I'm sorry, John gave the warning.
You can say hi back, Brian.
Sorry about that. I have a 3-year-old. So yes, we're in 24 states and the District of Columbia. We were founded in Pennsylvania, and we've been really active in New Jersey since early in the company's history. And we really consider New Jersey our backyard, and are very much looking forward to becoming a long-term member of the community and the city of Summit. One thing that probably is worth touching on as well is I work for our apartment living division, which handles rental apartments, and is probably the lesser known aspect of what we do. But we currently have approximately 20,000 units that are either completed, under construction, or in our pipeline. And with that, I'll turn it back to John. Do you want to say anything else before we turn it over to Alex?
I just wanted to amplify the point that L&M and Toll have a history of collaboration. Ours is a existing relationship that forged before 2008, survived 2008, and continues now in a robust way. We're concurrently pursuing a meaningful redevelopment in the city of DC together. So this is a comfortable partnership, and I think we not only were we drawn to this opportunity because it is Summit, but also because our two firms might capably address the challenges and opportunities that are created here. So we ask Alex Merlucci of Ingles Architecture and Engineering to support our efforts. Alex and I have collaborated previously, not only at Haynes, but also the New Jersey Bell telephone conversion at 540 Broad Street in Newark, as well as elsewhere. Ingles Architect Engineer brings a thoughtful approach to all of its projects, a sensitivity to the dialogue that I alluded to before, which is substantively impacted not only by the guidance we give him, but also the input received from municipal stakeholders. So Alex, can I ask you to introduce some of the visions that we have come to, and maybe start with an overview?
Sure. Thanks, John. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. We're really excited to be part of this process. We've engaged meaningfully with the steering committee over the last 2 years, and I think we are really coming to something that we're really excited about. So I'm going to jump in and we'll go from there. So as a general overview, Annie alluded earlier to the 3 subdistricts. So just to reiterate that, we're going to focus this evening on subdistricts 2, which is bound by Cedar and Maple, and Subdistrict 3 with frontage along Broad, Morris, and Cedar. So as part of our development program that we have put together in coordination with the city and the redevelopment plan, we've broken this down into, again, 3 subdistricts. So what we're looking at with our current development program is on Subdistrict 1, located on the northern side of Broad Street. We anticipate that that will be a consolidation of the parking throughout the new Broad Street West redevelopment area, with a 6-story parking garage located on the west side of the property, a ground floor retail and national organic grocer, and 50 to 80,000 square feet of downtown office space. That site is still under development, and we're working hard to get that to a state of further development that we're eager to share with you later this year, as Andy mentioned. Subdistrict 2 is immediately adjacent to the Village Green and comprises really the entirety of the block. However, as I'm sure everybody on the meeting knows, that block is also occupied by 2 really important community members, being the Y on the Broad Street side, and then the library on the Morris side. So what's left for redevelopment, while respecting and responding to those community assets, is really the area between, which we have focused our study effort on. We anticipate that that Subdistrict 2 will include a new 4-story building, 30 to 40 residential units, boutique ground floor retail, and a 2-story parking garage. I should mention in beginning to dig into these subdistricts that some of what we found to be the most exciting opportunity here is not just to bring new buildings to Summit or to the Broad Street West neighborhood, but rather to create spaces that kind of create a third space between public and private and offer opportunities for the public to engage with this new neighborhood, not only through the retailers, but through spaces that are created throughout the entire redevelopment area. Finally, Subdistrict 3, located along Broad Street, is planned to include a 5-story building, 115 to 140 residential units, 8,000 square feet of ground floor retail, and structured parking. You can see generally here, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, that while the buildings are shown clearly, they're around the perimeter. We've spent a lot of time developing the streetscape, the pedestrian realm, and the other public spaces that surround the buildings and really do create that neighborhood. We'll talk about that a little bit further shortly. What's important about this creating this neighborhood is also how the public benefits from this redevelopment effort. So we spent a lot of time through our engagement process on thinking through how each subdistrict and the neighborhood as a whole can be additive to the Summit downtown and to create new public benefits that don't currently exist throughout Summit, or that can amplify those that do exist. So we've broken that down into the public benefits attributable to each subdistrict. On Subdistrict 1, we anticipate that there will be approximately 10,000 square feet of public open space. What we're calling the Cedar Plaza extension, which is the area in red, and I'll talk about that a little bit further shortly. Considerable pedestrian level improvements along Broad Street on both sides, fronting the new buildings. A children's walk, which will wind through the redevelopment area. You can see that in purple, with opportunities for engagement along the walk. And then the public parking garage, which will consolidate all of the parking resources in this area into one location. On Subdistrict 2, again, you can see the proposed 4-story building located adjacent to the library. We anticipate a number of really big public benefits. That includes what we refer to as the People Street, which is a large public open space that you see in orange here that will connect the Village Green through Subdistrict 2 directly into the new neighborhood. That space will bleed into Subdistrict 3 and will tie into what we are referring to as Cedar Plaza, and I'll speak about that in a minute. We do anticipate that as part of that People Street, there will be significant public event space located along its length for programming, where that space can become a shared area for the downtown community members to enjoy. We'll provide opportunities for art showcase along that People Street. One of the key things that you may notice here is that locating this building affects how the entry to the library works. We've worked carefully with the library and the Y over the last year and a half to understand their operations, to understand their needs, and to understand how we can make this redevelopment on Subdistrict 2 benefit them as well as the neighborhood in general. So on the library side, one of the important elements here is that the library currently, during a prior renovation, relocated its entry onto the parking lot. Some of what we've discussed with the library is bringing that entry back to Maple Street to give it a meaningful street presence adjacent to the Village Green. And that is one of the public improvements that we anticipate included as part of this project. And we're working with them to develop that further. We also anticipate that there will be considerable street level improvements along Maple Street, the continuation of the children's walk that I mentioned earlier, and then additional public parking included on street. Subdistrict 3, again, located between Broad and Morris, will include 31,000 square feet of public open space. That includes Cedar Plaza, which is an outdoor plaza space, which you can see here in blue at the corner of Cedar and Broad. That also includes the public green located on Morris in between St. Teresa's and the new development. We do anticipate that there will be additional public improvements at the corner of Morris and Broad. The children's walk will include moments of engagement, fun, and play along its length, which provide for opportunities, not just for the perimeter of the building to be a sidewalk, but rather an opportunity for engagement and for other activities. And then we do anticipate, as part of that public green, that we will provide a community garden and public green programming space. There's also public parking included as part of the planned redevelopment here. Before I keep going, I just wanted to check with the other members of the team if I missed anything that you felt important, John, Annie, or Brian.
I think you did a thorough job. I think part of the imagery here that relates to the library and the Y is only illustrative. I think we remain substantively in a process to work through how we apply these solutions in a manner that works for both institutions and the city as well.
Thanks, John. All right, so with that, we're going to now dive in a little bit deeper, first on Subdistrict 2 and then on Subdistrict 3. So we'll start with Subdistrict 2. So this next slide is a kind of what we call the partee, or the program diagram that illustrates a little bit more close up the opportunities and kind of the goals of how we've started to think about the site. I think what's been most evident in kind of engaging with the Y and the library is that there's a strong sense of community here, and I think our hope is that we can amplify that and allow this redevelopment and the spaces that we create again to kind of continue to reinvigorate that and provide more opportunities for engaging all of the community, both the new residents that come with the development and those that are currently occupying the space. So again, to highlight some of the concepts that we discussed earlier, the People Street is really kind of it's kind of the backbone of this redevelopment effort on Subdistrict 2. So creating this public open space that can facilitate vehicular traffic, but can also be closed down to allow for public programming that kind of ties into the rest of the neighborhood. This space is one that provides direct connectivity again to the Village Green and kind of pulls the Village Green and the programming there into this new neighborhood. In the center of that, of what we call the People Street, we've provided for an opportunity at the backside of the Y for an outdoor event space where there could be a band shell or other types of space that could be programmed at various points throughout the year. We anticipate that the corner of Maple and the People Street becomes a really important one where we can focus our boutique kind of retail that will bring additional energy to Maple Street provide for an opportunity for those using the village green to engage with the building and the neighborhood, and to bring more activity to this back corner of the YMCA, which we hope to become more of a front corner. And then one of the ideas with including parking in this new building is that we can start to consolidate some of the parking resources and perhaps consider relocating that YMCA entry, which is currently split. There's an accessible entry in the back here and another entry in the front. So starting to think through with the Y how we can look at using the parking that's provided in the building to better facilitate handicap accessibility and parking resources, which are lacking in the backside of the Y currently. And then finally, thinking through the relocation of that library entry to the Maple Street frontage with additional opportunities for reading areas and accessibility into the building. As we start to think about the architecture and the aesthetics of this building, it became very evident to us early on that there's a lot of context in Summit, and Summit really has a very beautiful, vibrant downtown. And what we wanted to do carefully was to respond to that in different ways through the different sub-districts, being complementary to the existing assets and the existing architecture, while allowing this to speak as something new. So we've thought of these Subdistrict 2 and Subdistrict 3 in sort of a different way, where Subdistrict 2 we think of more as a transitional space where you're kind of transitioning from Village Green into the Broad Street West District or neighborhood, and how the building really could respond to what's immediately around it. We've seen consistently throughout Summit that there's a historic, rich use of masonry, and that's informed a lot of the design decisions that we've made as we've started to look at what the aesthetics look like here. I think also important to this site specifically is that the Central Presbyterian Church is located just adjacent to the Subdistrict 2 site, and it uses this kind of rich gray stone and in a dark palette and a contrasting lighter palette. If I go back to the plan quickly, you'll notice again that this redevelopment site is kind of framed by the Y on the northern side and the library on the southern side, both of which employ a red brick. So the idea here is that we could be responsive to the context in the Central Presbyterian Church by using a masonry material that was in that gray family, which would allow the new development to stand alone and allow the YMCA and the library to kind of frame it and not create any sort of competition while still being able to use masonry that's thoughtful and detailed appropriately. So the first look at the Subdistrict 2 building is taken standing in the Village Green, looking back towards the building. You can see the corner of the library in the distance on the right. A couple of important things to notice here. You'll notice the use of that gray brick as well as the lighter stone, which are responsive to the materials and context on the Central Presbyterian Church, while also recalling some of the stone utilized on the library and the Y. You'll notice that the building is 4 stories in height, with some key setbacks located along the People Street to create relief. The People Street that I mentioned earlier is actually just around the corner here, and I'll show you that further in a minute. You can see at the ground level, the main residential lobby located in the center, and then significant street level activation by the use of that boutique retail space on the right side, turning the corner into the People Street. You can also see the amenity space, which I'll show you in the floor plan in a minute, located on the left side of the residential lobby, creating further street level activation along Maple, as well as the pedestrian level improvements, which will include seating and landscaping all along Maple. We've used that gray masonry to create some sort of some stylized architectural detailing, including the creation of brick pilasters and some of the more traditional brick detailing, like the soldier courses above the windows and recessed corbels. You'll also note that the cornice is kind of a statement at the top of the building, while recalling some of the more historic cornice implementations that you see in downtown. That's been kind of was kind of an important point in our process in order to realize that that was one of the defining features in the downtown. So what we wanted to do here was use that same context concept and do it in a more stylized modern way, so that the building feels contextual, but it also reads as if it's of 2021 and is a modern building. This is another view now centered on the building. We're still standing in the village green, looking back at the same front of the building, you can see that kind of significant setback on the right side or the north side of the building, creating relief and effectively creating just a 3-story building adjacent to the People Street, which is on the right here. And we'll look at that in a minute. And again, you can see the street level activation with the retail, the residential, and then the amenity space. And then finally, aligned with the People Street, standing in the village green, kind of coming into the Broad Street neighborhood, you can see our new building on the left, the YMCA on the right, and just start to get a feel for how we envision this space looking and feeling, where it can be kind of lit up at night, can be closed down for activities or programming, can have the retail and restaurants spill out into this space and just provide a really great opportunity for community activation and activity. You can kind of see some of the art installation suggestions peeking around the corner, and this kind of extending through to Subdistrict 3, which would be in the distance here. So just to orient everybody quickly on the floor plan, this is the basement level. You can see that we have parking at the basement level. Just the People Street would be located on the top of the screen, Maple on the right and Cedar on the left. And then again, at the ground floor level, you can see that People Street, the connection to the Village Green located on the right side, and a couple of those key elements that I talked about, that boutique retail at the corner of about 1,800 square feet, the lobby located right in the middle, which is kind of our organizing element, and then the amenity located on the south side. And then the idea with this parking, and I mentioned this earlier, was that we consolidate the YMCA's accessible parking and further improve the access from that parking into that entry into the back of the Y. And then just to start to give a kind of look and feel to that boutique kind of retail, this is small mom and pop sort of retail that we envision for this site. Something like a candy store or ice cream shop, cafe or coffee shop. And again, I think, just to reiterate, one of the points that we feel is really important is that we want to create retail and non-residential opportunities that are additive to the Summit downtown. That the Summit downtown is so rich with restaurants and culture, and what we don't want to do is detract from that in any way. So really the goal in starting to curate these retailers and non-residential users is to complement what may be lacking, or to just again reinforce that we don't intend to cannibalize anything that currently exists in the downtown. And so to think again about how this creates the opportunity to inject kind of new public opportunities and public benefits. We started to think about these spaces and how they might be programmed. So again, you can see the Y located at the top of the screen, our new building at the bottom, and then that People Street in the center. So this is a program diagram of what a festival or evening event could look like, where this is closed down and allows for programming all the way from the Village Green through Subdistrict 2 in between the Y and our new building, and then into Cedar Plaza, which we'll talk about a little bit further. You can kind of see this lit up. You can see the use of, these are approximately 10 by 10 festival tents, that public programming and event space in the center, and then just this kind of creation of a different treatment at the ground level to create a space rather than this feeling like just a pass-through between the two buildings.
I would interject quickly, Alex, to say that some of the consideration here has been informed by what seems like an amazingly successful application of just this. So we're looking at what's going on Maple Street now, or on the other side of the tracks, nearer to Springfield, where restaurants are spilling out into the street. It seems like a celebration of all that makes Summit sort of successful. The very capable retailers who are leveraging the opportunity to expand their footprints and better access the consumers. It may be that this is simply an attempt to mimic that, offer more opportunity for that kind of thing, and to the extent that this is a street that is set up for that, it may be a more a less transient, more durable way to provide for another opportunity for just that kind of program.
So just to talk a little bit further about the architecture and detail of that space, we kind of envision that as a shared street, a curbless street, where it can be closed down, and by use of pavers and paver hierarchy and colors, it can feel more of a space by the use of the landscape and hardscape and kind of the thoughtful detailing of that space. So we're really excited about what that creates as an opportunity for the neighborhood here, and how it can be programmed and activated as this neighborhood really comes to life. And then just some additional precedents of how this kind of space has been accomplished elsewhere. Some of you may be familiar with these precedents. This is located at the Wellmont in Montclair, where again a similar space was created between existing buildings. And then some other opportunities. Burlington, Vermont is a good example. And these are spaces that kind of occupy the space between two buildings and become really this amazing opportunity for programming and events. And then just to illustrate a little bit further how public art has been used in and around our area of northern New Jersey. Some of these you've probably seen in Jersey City and Newark and Montclair. And so we think that this, provides an opportunity for, curated art installations throughout the length of that People Street, which would allow, this new neighborhood to further engage with existing resources and community within Summit. So with that, we'll transition over to Subdistrict 3. Subdistrict 3 again is the site located with frontage on Broad Street and Morris. So we thought this site spans from Cedar all the way to Morris, across from the Housing Authority property, and it provides for a lot of really great opportunities to kind of create the heart of this downtown neighborhood as the beacon from across the tracks. So we started to think about how this site could respond to some of the other concepts that we've been talking about. So the People Street becomes really important because it kind of terminates at the building, and wondering how that People Street can create the extension of that experience of public space through and around the site. So we took that idea of the People Street and started to think about how we locate lobbies in order to engage the downtown across the tracks, as well to engage the rest of this neighborhood, and started to think through a lobby that's kind of directly across from the train tracks as you come into this new neighborhood, a secondary lobby that's aligned with Chestnut, so that you're kind of engaging Subdistrict 4, which isn't part of this presentation, but is still part of the downtown neighborhood, the Broad Street West neighborhood. And then again, creating a party diagram that starts to highlight and lay out the concepts, what we look to achieve with the design of this subdistrict, the building, and the public open spaces. So a couple of really important concepts here. Cedar Plaza becomes kind of the heart of Subdistrict 3, where the People Street ties together to the rest of the Broad Street programming, and ultimately to Subdistrict 1, and creates this opportunity for a great outdoor space that will engage the retail, which really encircles this whole corner here. And we'll look at that floor plan a little bit further in a minute. The other opportunity was to create a green band or a children's walk that ties all these together and creates not just a sidewalk, but an opportunity for space and moments of play and fun and inclusion engagement along that walk. I talked a bit about the lobby. So again, the lobby kind of, as you enter into the downtown, the lobby across from Summit, and then the third lobby across from the People Street, so that this building is kind of permeated and penetrated on all sides by the integration of this public realm. And then at the other side of the building, the activation of Morris, the Morris and Broad corner became important to us, so that there was sort of excitement as you enter into the neighborhood coming from the other side of Summit, the west side. And then finally the final public amenity here is the public green located between our building and St. Teresa's Community Center, where we've created this public-private transition space. And just to kind of further highlight that the kids walk, the idea is that this kind of winds through the sub-districts, and at key moments along the way provides for different levels of engagement, sensory engagement, things like that. We also envision that art can extend into this sub-district as well, with the implementation of street art and street sculpture, which we'll show you a little bit more in a minute. So starting again, kind of where we left off on Subdistrict 2, it became really important to us and to the steering committee that these kind of public open spaces created not just individual events, but created kind of an experience as they all tied together. So that People Street that we talked about earlier spills onto Cedar and then becomes part of Cedar Plaza, where really we could envision this whole area being closed down for large scale events. And you can see that kind of programming, the festival tents extending onto Cedar, where that same hierarchy and treatment of pavement, hardscape, and landscape kind of extends into what's currently just a regular street, but allows that street to become an extension of that public benefit and open space. And then kind of spilling around the corner, and eventually when we can come back with Subdistrict 1 across the street. So just to give you kind of an idea of what this children's walk and moments of fun and play might look like, this is an opportunity for sensory engagement, for art. It can be by way of bike racks. It can be by way of physical engagement type of activities like the spray feature. And so the idea is that this becomes this kind of continuous experiential creation along and through the neighborhood that will allow not only adults but children to engage with this new neighborhood. And so we talked about kind of the wonderful downtown that is Summit, that really is so invigorating, and allowing this new neighborhood to kind of be its own new neighborhood with its own identity, complementary to the existing Summit downtown. So we thought through how this space and this building, which is again kind of the heart of this new Summit Broad Street West neighborhood, can kind of be this beacon from across the tracks and can create sort of excitement and draw people to this side of Summit as well. So we looked at some opportunities for signage, for lighting, and how we can use that to kind of add to the building and to the neighborhood, and to create this sense of place as you enter the Broad Street West neighborhood. And then to look again at the secondary significant public benefit piece, we've created what we're calling the public green in between the building and St. Teresa's. And the idea with this space is that it extends the neighborhood not only in the center at Broad and Cedar, but also around to the Morris side, and engages with the other community stakeholders at the other side of Morris. So this provides the opportunity for us to create a public green. This is a space that can be programmed in multiple ways, as well as for a community garden. I think there's more visioning to do with this space, but we anticipate that community gardens or dog run, things of that nature, can be integrated here as this additional public space that kind of ties into all the other public and pedestrian level improvements. And so you can start to see here the vision for what that space may become: an opportunity for movies in the park, for food or other festivals, for passive recreation, walking, community garden, etc. We're really excited about that as a kind of secondary but very important space to this neighborhood. And so then transitioning over to the architecture and the aesthetics of Subdistrict 3. So we kind of, we talked a little bit about Subdistrict 2 being transitional and how it's responsive to the existing red brick buildings adjacent. But then where we really started this contextual study was to look at the really historic buildings that exist in the Summit downtown, and actually looking at the historic Summit downtown walk. There are really some wonderful pieces of architecture that create a language. And what we've tried to do is allow Subdistrict 3 to be responsive again to that language, and to feel a little bit more modern in its interpretation and stylization of some of those historic materials and architectural moments. So I mentioned earlier about the kind of historic use of brick, masonry, and stone, which you see on buildings like the Summit Opera House, Old Town Hall. And then the use of the of kind of the dramatic bracketed and decorative cornice in the more traditional sense on some of these similar buildings, the Melrose building. And it starts to set up a language that really spoke to us and spoke to the steering committee. And so we've tried to respond to that in starting to craft this building so that it can draw from that historic context, which really is very rich, and to create something that's new and exciting in this new neighborhood. So we're going to take you through a series of renderings that kind of encircle the building, starting with the view from the People Street, looking back towards the building. So this view is as if I'm standing in the People Street, entering into the onto Cedar Street, and looking at our new building. So you can see here the People Street continues across. You can see this this kind of area of fun graphic, which is a first concept at that children's walk, which kind of differentiates itself from the sidewalk as it continues across the street. You can see this pedestrian level retail and non-residential activation. So we anticipate this being all sorts of different non-residential users, retailers, restaurants, and arcade, and we'll look at some precedent images for that a bit further in the future. You can start to see that the use of the paver and the hierarchy of the pavers kind of wrapping the corner, and the integration of landscape and hardscape to create some really exciting spaces. On the building, you can see the use of a variegated red masonry, which is responsive to the use of red brick throughout the Summit downtown, and then the modern interpretation of that bracketed cornice, which kind of culminates in at Cedar Plaza, which we talked about earlier as this kind of really exciting event and sort of the heart of this new neighborhood. You can also see as you follow the children's walk, some of these moments of fun and play that pop up integrated into the landscape and hardscape and provide or create opportunities to pause and engage with the neighborhood. We've also integrated signage and kind of branding and beacon opportunities into the neighborhood as we had talked about. So the idea of designating this as Broad Street West, as if you're entering through the People Street from the Village Green, and then again another opportunity at the corner, which we'll look at in a moment. Our next view is going to take us around the building this way, so onto Broad Street and then down Broad Street. So now standing at the corner of Cedar's on our left and Broad directly in front of us, you can start to see this kind of beacon at the corner where we use the building as an opportunity to kind of brand this Broad Street West neighborhood and call attention to it from across the tracks from the Summit downtown. You can see that kind of we've positioned our lobby to kind of be an exciting draw into the building as you enter into the neighborhood. And then the integration of a dramatic extended canopy at the corner to provide for outdoor space integrated into Cedar Plaza, which you can see at the corner here. You can also see that kind of integration of public street art by the way of sculptural art, street art, and then the continuation of this pedestrian level experience down the street. You'll notice greenery peeking out from the tops of the building, and it's probably a good opportunity to talk about some of the setbacks that we've created to provide for relief along the length of the building, as well as our focus on sustainability. And we've, in the developments that we've worked on together, have really focused on ensuring that the buildings that we put together are ones that are sustainable, with a focus on renewable energy, sustainable systems, and we focused, largely on integrating programs like the Energy Star program, which really functions to create a building that performs in excess, 15% in excess of the code minimum. Now looking on Broad Street, you can see the continuation of the building. We've provided for some key building breaks along its length in order to create a transition from the retail and amenity space which exists in this area adjacent to the lobby, down to a lower scale residential experience as you continue towards Morris. You can see again kind of that continuation of the variegated red masonry, the use of stone, and then the use of modern large windows in this area, as well as an integration of unique material to kind of frame that residential lobby and allow it to stand apart from the remaining architecture. You can also see the that pedestrian new landscape and hardscape and kind of pedestrian level experience that continues all the way down Broad Street on both sides, both where we're standing on the northern side as well as directly in front of the building. And then now looking back at the building, you can see this kind of creation of architectural bays with the third lobby located right in the center. This is adjacent to Chestnut. And then additional branding at this corner, which also provides a gateway into this new neighborhood as you enter off of Morris. And then finally, looking at the other side of the building, you can see St. Teresa's on our right and the creation of this public-private space in the back. So I say public and private because what we've done here is to create a unique opportunity where these are direct entry or kind of townhome style units where they enter off of that green space directly into the apartments, but are separated by the creation of different levels where the public space is defined by the lower elevation in front here and the private space up on the stoops into those apartments, which kind of recall the idea of a New York City brownstone where the stoop kind of defines that private space relative to the public realm. And then you can see in front of you the how this space that we've created can start to be programmed as outdoor passive or active recreation, movies in the park, and to provide another opportunity for public benefit and engagement in the neighborhood. And so just to briefly orient you in with our floor plans, again, we have basement level parking below the building. And then up at the ground floor, we have public parking adjacent to the People Street on the right. This is Cedar on the right side with the People Street. We have retail occupying the entirety of the Cedar Street frontage for the building and wrapping onto Broad Street with our residential lobby located right in the center. And then our amenities also located on Broad Street to further activate that Broad Street experience. And then just to start to think through what these type of retailers or non-residential users could be at the ground floor, we start to think about restaurants, other types of active engagement like a rock climbing gym or arcade or other children's kind of play areas. So these are the kinds of other partners we're looking for in this type of mixed-use development that is additive to the Summit downtown. And I think that concludes the design portion of the presentation. So I can turn it back to John if there's anything that you'd like me to go back to or summarize, or back to Annie.
Well, I think you did a great job, and I thank you for wading through. There's a lot there. I think let's defer back to Annie and as she has been guiding the program tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Very detailed, great, lots of insight. What we'd like to do now is turn it over, raise your hand and we'll, select people as people raise their hand. But any question, comments you may have, there's no no questions, no wrong answers. There's wrong answers, I guess, but there's no wrong questions. And we tried to cover everything, but just because something wasn't mentioned doesn't mean it hasn't been addressed. So please share your thoughts. And Tan, I give you authority to do that.
Yes.
Actually, please just say your name and your address, because I will be taking notes.
Yeah, and I think we're sort of time boxing it around 3 minutes to give everyone an opportunity. First, I'm gonna allow Ms. Hamann to speak. She had her hand raised. I'll promote her to panelist, and then she has the ability to speak.
Mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Ruth Hammond. I live at 34 Valley View Avenue in Summit. And what's not clear to me from your description is the benefit to the library, or how this all relates to the library, that will enhance the space. And I mean, the only thing I have heard is that the library entrance will be moved, which is fine. But it looks to me like it's just otherwise smushed up against that new building. Is there any open space, green space, walking space between the library and the rest of the development?
Anything else? I'll field the question. Anything else? I just wanted to give you a chance.
No, I just really am looking to find out, you know, what the enhancement will be to the library, how that has been considered in the development.
Great.
I mean, it looks lovely, but
yeah, no, it's a great question. So one of the great things about this process, I'm gonna turn it over to John to get a little bit into the details, but just to frame it, one of the great parts of this process is how we've been able to work with the surrounding property owners. And we came to the library with a plan that we're like, this is great, this is perfect. And they're like, actually, we have had something in mind for a while, and it's better, we think. And so we are working with them and refining that right now. But John and Alex have largely been handling those conversations. So John, I don't know what you want to add to that. I know there's a little bit more details, but yes, there's open space, and yes, we're following the library's lead on this.
Yes, I think you addressed that really well, Annie. I think we're having a very good dialogue with both of the civic institutions that are affected by Subdistrict 2, and we've presented a concept, and library leadership has responded in kind with an extremely informed one that was guided by their operational experience and goals and thoughts for their, kind of future operation. So I think we are guided in part by a process to implement their ideas, enhancing their gateway entry. They may convert some of their outdoor space into indoor space to expand their footprint, and in short, I hope that the end product will be an enhanced library experience that reflects the direction of library leadership and is served well by the opportunity enabled by the Subdistrict 2 redevelopment.
Yeah, and I believe we're working towards having an updated concept at the next library board meeting, correct?
Correct.
Well, in June or, yeah, okay.
Correct. That is responsive to the library's own direction.
Yeah.
Then I think next is Mr. Wack. I'm gonna also allow you to be a panelist, so you have the ability to speak.
Hi, Robert Weck, 63 River Road. I just had a couple questions about pedestrian safety. You have a couple mid-block crosswalks, especially the one People Street leading over to the Village Green. Are you going to do like curb extension, narrowing the street, and or having raised medians? Because there's a lot with 150 plus residential units. There's going to be plus the Y and plus the library and possible grocery store. There's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of traffic and pedestrian interaction, which, as we know, can be deadly. So will that be addressed later on in the process?
John, I'll let you kind of describe some, or Alex, the treatments, but a full traffic analysis and impact and design will have to be done hopefully this summer. But I'll let them kind of describe in detail some of the treatments.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and one that we are concerned about as well. In introducing additional residential density or non-residential density and creating these mid-block crossings, we need to make sure that they're safe. So there's a number of ways that we can do that, both by notification beacons, by tabletop and traffic calming, and we do anticipate that those elements will be integrated as we kind of proceed down the path here, ultimately towards a site plan approval, where we would work with Summit Engineering and our own civil and traffic engineers to detail in full all of those pedestrian elements to ensure that all of these crossings, and even the non-crossings, the sidewalks and these kind of third spaces are safe for pedestrians.
Just
At
to
this
add
point,
real quick, some of the things that have been considered are things like raised pedestrian tables, curbless, or not completely curbless streets, but curbless corners, curbless pieces, and Broad Street's significantly wide right now because of the turning radius that the fire trucks need to be able to get in and out of. And with this, we're able, I mean, you can't really tell from here, but at minimum you have, 10-foot sidewalks, and the road's going to be brought in, but not in an obtrusive way with like curb cuts and bump outs, but in a overall comprehensive way. So I just want to add that.
at this point, there's no one among the attendees that have their hand raised, but I'll give people, there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Mr. Klacik, I'll promote you to panelist. If you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
By the way, when I clicked on it, it said I lowered my hand, but it seemed to work that way. George Classic, 27 Oak Forest Lane. You're going to add 180 residential units. What's the effect on the school system? This could be a few hundred kids.
Is that all your questions, or?
Well, I had a couple others if you want them all at once.
Yeah, I'm writing them down so I can make sure we respond to all of them.
Okay. And the library parking, how's that going to work? Are the people going to have to walk all the way over from that new garage to the library? Or is there some other place that people can park?
Mm-hmm.
And the third is, right now, St. Teresa's has an agreement with the city that it can use the adjacent parking lot over the weekend for its services. How's that going to work? Because that parking is going to evaporate, apparently.
Okay. I'm going to say a couple things, and then I'll turn it over to John, particularly as it relates to the library parking and St. Teresa's parking. As part of the financial analysis, there is a fiscal impact study. I can tell you, I've done several of projects like this of similar size or bigger, usually, and it's been shown that, it's about a project this size, maybe 30 kids generated. But that is something that, you keep track of annually and we considered. And if there is a negative impact or any kind of increased cost, mitigation will have to be considered. We've already been keeping that in mind in that analysis about the fiscal impacts, which would include police, fire, infrastructure, schools, will be done this summer. Again, if everybody's conceptually happy. I know that John has been engaged, significantly with St. Teresa's, or Brian, I'm sorry, one of you, whoever from the team would like to take that and just kind of go through St. Teresa's and what y'all have been discussing and the library parking, please.
Brian, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, so very good questions, and we appreciate them. And I'll start with St. Teresa's. We are in an active dialogue with St. Teresa's, I can't tell you that we have a definitive solution there, but we are, as with the parking that currently serves the library in Subdistrict 2, we will need to replace that. We have anticipated that all of the parking spaces that are being displaced will be replaced. The Subdistrict 1 garage is the primary source of replacement parking, but there are also spaces in the Subdistrict 2 and 3 buildings that could be made available for public use or for St. Teresa's use as well. But that said, we haven't come to a firm conclusion on that. I would also note that if it wasn't noted earlier, that the public space that's shown between the proposed building in Subdistrict 3 and St. Teresa's Church is also shown partially on the church property, and we need to coordinate that aspect of the project with them and get their agreement. So it's something that certainly important issues, and there's an ongoing dialogue there. on the Subdistrict 2 property. The majority of the existing parking would be replaced in Subdistrict 1. There are, Alex, please correct me if I'm wrong, 27 replacement spaces on the ground floor of that building that would serve the needs of the library patrons as well as the Y.
Okay. Next. Or I don't know if you have anything else you want to add. You're good. Okay. All right.
Let's see. The next is Deb. I'm gonna promote you to panelist. One sec. If you could unmute.
Hi, Deb McCann, 4 Colt Road, Summit, New Jersey. A few questions. First, you said you estimate about 30 kids with 180 apartment units. That seems low. And then just if you can help clarify when you say that will be mitigated, if it's more than 30 kids, help me understand what that means. And then I'm sorry if I missed it. The person who asked about the parking for the library, I think you said it would be covered with Subdistrict 1 parking, but I don't know if you mentioned, for handicap parking or people who, can't walk that far, how that's being handled. And then third is just for Subdistrict 1, I know you're not presenting it tonight, but if you can just give a quick overview, I guess a grocery store, just a quick description of what we can expect to come with that. Thank you.
So just to clarify my statement, and John and Brian, if you want to talk about the market a little bit, the reason I said 30 kids is I just finished a similar project working on behalf of Chatham. It's actually pretty much a lot bigger, but it's a similar product, and they did a very in-depth, several back and forth working with the Board of Ed impact statement, and it turned out that a project of like in multifamily 1 and 2 bedrooms in this market is expected to generate 30 kids. So that was just my recent experience of this. We'll have to go through the same thorough analysis. I'll add that, Alex, if you want to real quick walk through Subdistrict 1 again, that'd be great. And again, maybe just show where the public parking is in Subdistrict 2 and 3 that's going to be available to the Y in the library, and I guess show the handicap spaces there.
Sure. So just to touch on Subdistrict 1, the parking deck envisioned there is 6 stories, and it's envisioned to include replacement parking for the existing at-grade parking, which will be impacted by this development. So there's existing parking on Subdistrict 3, Subdistrict 2, and Subdistrict 1. They'll be all consolidated into the garage as well as new parking demand. On Subdistrict 2, which I think responds directly to your question, that ground level parking will include accessible spaces, both for the library as well as for the Y. The Y's handicap spaces are currently in the back here in this corner, so they'll be located in the Subdistrict 2 building with convenient, accessible access into and through the Subdistrict 2 building. And the library will maintain its parking on the Cedar Street side, which does also include handicap spaces. And then in Subdistrict 3, there will be additional public parking resources directly adjacent to the library, so accessed right here through that Cedar Street library. And there are about 30 spaces within the Subdistrict 3 building. There will also be, as required per code, handicap spaces in the parking deck.
I'm sorry, Alex, in your description of the programmatic elements of Subdistrict 1, the highlights were the replacement parking facility, the ground floor retail, and some either boutique or substantive office space that might address potential market demand for that kind of resource in Summit. As part of our Subdistrict 1 presentations, we anticipate a level of engagement with the adjacent housing authority. We've already begun conversations about assuring their interests are addressed in whatever we present. That remains a work in progress, and so it will be a vital part of whatever we show when we show Subdistrict 1, how this adjacency between the contemplated redevelopment of Subdistrict 1 and the existing housing authority structure how that interaction works, and how any adverse implications are mitigated on the housing authority neighbor.
Yeah, and just to kind of add, I don't want it to seem like we're being like cryptic or weird about Subdistrict 1. As you all know, the post office is part of this area. We've been engaged with the post office at least since winter of 2019. We have a letter of interest with them about potentially relocating them. We just didn't want to come out with a plan that, you know, we know in the next couple of months whether or not the U.S. Postal Service is going to, it's a slow process. We'll know whether or not it's going to be a part of the project or not. And we want to come to you with a concept that reflects what is actually feasible. They have been good conversations so far. As things move along, we'll keep you posted, but that's the only reason we're not prepared yet to kind of go into depth on Subdistrict 1, because we need to kind of tie up the final yes or no on whether or not the post office will be relocated.
Okay, then next we have someone with the Zoom name Galaxy S9, which I'll promote the panelist.
I think that was me, but the question has been answered. It was in regard to the post office.
Okay. Yeah. We're working with them just to let you know, you're not going to lose your post office. They definitely want to stay within walking distance of their current location. And they'll have to accept whatever, like we'll have to provide for them and accept relocation services. So I also want to make sure that we're clear that we're not losing the post office.
And then next is Ms. Patel.
Hello, this is Donna Patel. I'm on Beekman Road. I'm the chair of the Environmental Commission in Summit, and I just have a couple questions. Overall, I love the increased open space and green space, especially considering this is pretty much a completely paved area right now. The community garden's a great idea. My questions, one of them relates to stormwater management for the site. It looks like a lot of the plantings are level with the ground, so I think they are kind of designed as either bioswales or rain gardens, but I just wanted to touch on that. And if some of my questions are further down the road points, I understand that also. I also would just put in a plug for as many native species in those plantings and green spaces as possible. In terms of the comment about renewable energy, I know you mentioned the Energy Star for the buildings. I saw the green roof. I didn't know if there was an intention to have solar panels on any of the roofs, electric vehicle charging stations, or again, if these are things that are further down the line. But just to, I'm glad sustainability was such a focus, and I hope it continues to maintain a strong focus on this. And just separate, as a Summit resident, I just wanted, it looks like Broad Street staying two-way traffic in this. Yeah. And I just wanted to clarify if that's.
Yeah, the dotted line's confusing. Thank you. I will say a lot of things you mentioned were incorporated in the redevelopment plan. I don't think I had a chance to work with you, but I have worked with other people on the commission a few years back. And the redevelopment plan does require native species. It does encourage and require a bit of green infrastructure and stormwater management throughout. And I'll let Alex explain if there's any like designated areas for that. And I will defer to John and Brian on the solar. I believe the redevelopment plan also requires EV charging parking spaces, but I'll turn it over to John and Brian to add anything else about renewable energy or sustainability.
John, do you want me to talk a little bit about what we typically do?
Sure.
So I'll address in order, I think. So as far as plant species and bioswales, we do anticipate going through an in-depth design process on the landscaping and bioswales and other means of using the landscape and hardscape design to satisfy stormwater mitigation requirements will be important in our development program. As far as renewable energy, what we've done different approaches on different projects, electric vehicle charging stations or provisions for the same are important, and we've integrated those into many of the projects we've done, including the Haynes development that John referenced, as well as some of the others. And renewable energy, it depends on the project and the incentives available and the roof area that's available. I could tell you that on most projects, and we would anticipate that being included here, at the very minimum, we would design the building structurally and from an electrical standpoint to be able to receive renewable energy by way of solar panels in the future, or perhaps integrate them during the design process, and that would be vetted through design development and construction documents.
Yep. Anything else? You good? Okay. I was asking John and Brian. All right, great questions. Thank you. Next.
It was hard to add to that.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Next, we have Mr. Snipper.
You may be on mute. We haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah. Sorry, here I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I have 3 or 4 brief questions.
Okay.
It looks as though the access to the Cedar Street parking for the Subdistrict 3 new residential building, the southern parking area, that'll be accessed through, so Cedar Street's going to be closed to vehicular traffic, and then it's going to drain into that new parking area to the west. Is that correct? That's what it looks like. And then adjacent to that new parking structure or facility, there is currently what I would describe as a grade B or grade C building, which on your schematic is no longer there, and it looks like there's surface parking there now. So is it planned that that building will be raised? I presume. I think the city acquired that domain, if I'm not mistaken. That bill, yes, correct.
Yeah, not within a domain, but yeah, go ahead. Well, yes, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so that's 1 and 2 things. The third thing has to do with what percentage of the planned residential construction would be below market or subsidized for low income, below market rate. And because I know in the city, it's usually 20% historically has been what developers have designated for affordable housing. So that's my third question. And then my fourth thing, I know that you're not addressing Subdistrict 1 details or specifics, but it seems to me as though the post office, whatever decision is made, that's an historic New Deal structure dating from 1936 itself. And it seems as though whatever is going into Subdistrict 1 will not involve saving any part of the historic post office building. So I understand plans are still up in the air, but it seems like whatever happens, that building is coming down. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Snipper, before you start answering the questions, could you, for the record, state your address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at 134 Maple Street.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you, because sometimes we don't cover everything when we try to go through these presentations. So Alex, I'll let you kind of zoom in around Cedar Street and explain the circulation there and entry and exit to the parking. Yes, the property you're referring to, the building that's gone, is 7 Cedar Street. The city did acquire it, not through eminent domain, but with the idea that it would help round out, there you go, perfect, help round out and shape out a good portion, a good floor plan for a redevelopment project there. The percent of residential that'll be affordable, it's at least 20%. I'll let John go into that a little bit more. We're also looking at some opportunities for what we're calling workforce housing. And again, I'll let John address that. And as far as the post office facility goes, yes, there's the small portion along Maple is a historic building. There's a requirement if we move forward with the USPS to go through a historical review, a federal level one, and we'll also have to go through a state review if it is demolished. Again, maybe we've thought about if it could be incorporated or not, but either way, there's a federal and state process we'll have to go through if it were to be demolished. It has significant public engagement and review. So again, it's a little bit up in the air right now until we know what's going to happen with the post office. But I'll turn it over to Alex and John and anything Brian Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll quickly address the circulation. So we don't intend to close Cedar Street at all. It will remain a vehicular street, but will be treated differently than just normal asphalt pavement. And that's by way of integrating the paver or other hardscape material that will kind of unify these public spaces in and through. So again, Cedar Street will remain a two-way street. We do anticipate that the creation of this kind of contiguous treatment through the People Street and to Cedar Plaza does provide for this space in its entirety to be closed down in whole or in part for public events temporarily. The other question, which was related to the parking entry, there's actually two entries to the parking into Subdistrict 3. The public parking that we talked about is accessed directly off of Cedar, so there's ingress and egress for vehicles here, as well as a lobby located on Cedar Street. There's additional basement level parking, which isn't connected to that public parking on Cedar, and that's accessed off of Morris. John, do you want to address the other points?
Affordable housing. Yeah.
I don't know whether the question also ran to how the People Street parking entrance work. Did you want to just hit that quickly while the subject was raised?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. So again,
can you just go to the ground floor? Sorry, of the building. I feel like that's the best way to see it. Sorry.
Sure. No problem. So on Subdistrict 2, you can see the People Street passing from Maple to Cedar. There is vehicular traffic on that People Street, but again, it's anticipated that it could be easily closed down in whole or in part while still facilitating vehicular access to the parking spaces. And that is by way of a entry into the building for vehicles off of the People Street into that parking lot.
Okay. John?
You know, Annie, I think your answer was probably, I'm not really sure. Not sure how to cap it off more.
Yeah, so just let everyone know that, that there's a clearly defined responsibility within the existing code. The redevelopment plan reiterated that and requires consistency with it. John and Brian have extensive experience working with all different kind of structures for residential, brackets and for housing. And they've thought up and provided some really creative ideas, but they're at minimum going to be hitting the code requirement.
Okay, then the next is Ms. Gagnon. Yeah, there you go.
There. Hi, Dory Gagnon, 27 Bedford Road. I'm sorry if this was asked or stated before. I joined late. I was coaching lacrosse, so I apologize. So I have a couple concerns about all of this development in the middle of town. Mm-hmm. I've been a resident here my whole life, about 40 some years now. And I utilize the library and the Y so much with my children. I had 3 in diapers at once. And I'm concerned about all the lack of parking that's close by to the Y and to the library, like close by. And I had twins and I had one right afterwards. And having 3 small children close in age and going to all of the library classes and using the Y, I can't imagine having to park my car in the winter and in the rain so far away. So like, that's my number one concern. And I'm speaking to all like the new parents coming on and to the people behind me, because I'm no longer having any more children. But, I'm thinking ahead to all of the future parents here and to all of the obstacles that they have to endure when they're taking little kids out of the car and going to all of these classes. Because those 2 facilities, I really utilized all of the classes at the Y, the connection, and to the library. So I don't know on the adjacent side of the Cedar Street. I'm not sure if you said if that's still the business that's there, if that's parking for them. So if you could address that to me and just let me know if that's parking that's going to be utilized for the library as well. I think you just mentioned that that wasn't, it was going to be off of where that Subdistrict 1 is. And I think you had just a couple of the spots behind the Y for handicap, but so that's number one. And all of the residential units being built is great. But again, just like former Chief Wack had stated, with all of the increase in the residential, I'm super concerned with the impact of traffic that's going to have. I have children at the middle school right now, and I can't even navigate the pickup and drop off at the middle school. That intersection right by the train station of the Broad Street and I can't remember the other intersection, but that
Maple?
one, is it Maple?
If you're talking about right next to the green.
Yeah, right by the green. And there's no light there, right? So I'm trying to navigate just getting around there without hitting a kid, because the kids have to cross the street without the kids getting hit. And it's very tricky. So having all of this built up and navigating pickup and drop off around the middle school, I'm just very concerned with adding all of this congestion right there when we have, we have the Y has a school, the connection has aftercare, and we have the middle school, and then we have CPC right there too. So those are my two biggest concerns of the traffic and safety and the parking. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And naturally, like those are concerns that with any development, and honestly, I'm sure if it's a concern now, that's worry about that getting exacerbated. Like I mentioned, I'm not meaning like I did mention, but I didn't expand on it. We will have to do the redevelopment plan requests and requires a pretty significant traffic impact study that's beyond what, to say it gently, beyond what the municipal code would require. And it means that instead of just having to look at the street right in front of the project, you have to look at the area as a whole. So things like middle school peak times of parking, which we've already looked at the peak parking for the Y and the library. And we do think that at the peak times between those two structured surface lots, we'll be able to accommodate most of the parking that was there at those peak times. But I'll just say that the traffic study that they have to do has to look at a more comprehensive area, and the goal is that whatever they do, they have to do no harm. So if they're adding a lot of traffic, if they're adding a lot of issues, they have to make improvements to maintain the level of service. And what we'd like to do, hopefully, and if there's options, and we're going to have to go through this process, it's a pretty lengthy process to kind of design and understand all these things, but it's what we're going to try to do this summer. They grade intersections and roads based off of level of service, which is like A, B, C, D, E, F. So what we'd like to do, like for example, if Broad and Maple is right now graded D, maybe through these improvements and some additional mitigative efforts, we can bring it up to C. I mean, we may not get it to A. You may never be able to get that intersection to A because it's a attractive downtown with many assets. It's great to have schools near a downtown. I would have loved to be able to walk to a downtown when I was in school. So I hear you. We've been very considerate of that. The committee and everyone's been involved, and I know the elected officials have reiterated that. The idea is to make this as safe and as welcoming as possible for pedestrians, and at the same time make sure that we don't make congestion worse, but hopefully find some solutions to that. And then the other thing is we were looking at some options for if there's like you can have expectant mother parking spaces in public parking garages or in parking lots. We're looking at if like there's something like that we can do, or ways to regulate that and manage that in these public parking areas. I will say they are going to be covered. So like weather is good. It's a pretty shorter, similar distance that you'll be exposed. But we are aware that that's a concern, and we're trying to look at options for giving preference to people who might have not only like wheelchairs, but kids, strollers, things like that. I don't know if y'all want to add anything else.
I don't know at what point the individual asking the question jumped on the line, but we emphasized throughout the process that we have been long in talks with both the library and the Y, who've emphasized just the point you've made, and so they are advocates for just the solutions to the issues that you've raised, and with them, we are trying to match or improve assets that may serve the consumers that you're thinking about. You know, you, when you had 3 kids that you were lugging to each of their programs, I think we have had just the conversations you're talking about, and what we'd like to do is actually assure that this neighborhood is hospitable to the parent and the children who are patrons of those civic institutions we want to sustain with this redevelopment. So the point, your comments are on point, and they will be, the issue will remain integral to the design and the development scheme we lay out here. And we hope at the end of this that Brian's 3-year-old who chimed in earlier will be among those safe and happy using these facilities when we're done. I think the good news is the bones are here for us to preserve and enhance the access opportunities you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is like the People Street idea came from both the library and the YMCA looking for some outdoor programmable space that's near them. That's like, because I know the green's there, but you know, we've heard sometimes it can be a lengthy process, and you can't do pop-up events or like, oh, it's a nice day, let's take the yoga class outside. So I know that we're talking about parking and parking to assist the library and the Y, but things like the People Street and the plaza that may be taking away parking spaces, replacing them, is to create a different and additional benefit there. And those are trade-offs, and we'll have to go down the road with that, but just something to keep in mind. Okay.
Okay, next is Miss Allen. Please state your address.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, this is Stacy Allen. I'm at 17 Plymouth Road in Summit. And I just wanted to ask, I wanted to follow up on Dory's question about the parking as well. I'm looking at the plan and I see that you have the subdivision 2. Could you, I think I got most of your presentation, but could you tell me how many spots are in subdivision 2? And then, okay, so that's one question. Sorry, I'll continue with my questions. The next question I have is, when you do your traffic plan, or have you already considered the amount of trucks coming in and out of this area? Obviously, if you get to subdivision 1 as approved, if there's any sort of grocery store, that would mean a lot of trucks. And I saw you had a concept of like a tap room or bar, you know, kind of pub area. That would mean trucks coming in. So I just want to know, are trucks measured and how? And my last question is, I would like to understand how big this is compared to the rest of Summit, especially when it comes to apartments. So is there a number that you guys already know of that are apartments on Beechwood, Union, Springfield, Maple, and Summit Avenue? So how big is this compared to that? Is that going to double the size of the apartments? I'm not thinking of the big building that's at the end by the police station. I don't know what that building's called, but that has apartments as well. I'm thinking of the downtown apartments. I'd like to know how many there are and how many more this adds, if it's double or whatever that might be.
Okay. I don't know if you all looked at those as comps, John or Brian, and you know the answer to the unit count in the other buildings. If not, we'll have to look it up and look into that and get back to you. But I'm gonna let John, sorry?
We can say it's not double.
Okay, it's not double. Okay, that's good. Then can you just touch on how, I mean, because you mentioned, you know, the potential grocer, how important the truck traffic properly working is to them. And can you also go over the number of total spaces in Subdistrict 2, please?
Sure. Brian, any of that you want to pick up?
I mean, starting with Subdistrict 2, I think Alex didn't correct me earlier when I stated there were 27 spaces on the ground floor, so I'm fairly confident that's the correct number. I mean, on the traffic, for truck traffic, obviously we need to undertake a detailed traffic study, and that will be part of that study. I'd say Subdistrict 1 will be the subject of a separate meeting to discuss in detail when we're a little bit further along there. So I don't know that we have.
Yeah, I think our
answered
question was is how they're and how they're considered into the design or in the study itself. Like I think it was more of like what's the process for making sure that they're included.
Alex, do you want to take that one?
So it comes in, I think studying the trucks comes at multiple levels. So first there's the logistics of how the trucks navigate through the site, stop to deliver goods, etc. That's a civil engineering and traffic engineering problem. So for Subdistrict 1 in particular, when we start to look at perhaps the grocer or whatever the other retailer might be, we'll look to design the building and the site to allow the trucks to be able to get in and through without causing traffic backups in the streets, and that'll be based upon the required size of trucks for those different retailers. It also means looking at what curbside loading may look like for some of the smaller retailers. Subdistrict 2 and Subdistrict 3 have small retail spaces, and so deliveries can often happen by way of van or other smaller vehicles that we would look to create temporary loading zones throughout the neighborhood that would be limited in time, so that there's a designated spot for that to happen, and building management staff would coordinate the timing in which to do that. And when we look to finalize our traffic study throughout the neighborhood, which is a condition of this redevelopment process as well, site plan approval of the traffic engineer, we'll study peak traffic demand not only for residential and non-residential through the neighborhood, but also for the commercial loading and things of that nature. So that will be included in the traffic analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Mr. Hiller.
If you're
Hello, Jeff Hiller at 4 Pembroke Road.
Okay.
First of all, I'd say when we moved to town, we have 2 little kids right now. When we moved to town, we're pregnant with a third. We lived on Elm Street in one of the townhouses right across from CPC. And we rented a townhouse there for 1.5 years before we bought the house we're in now. And I think living downtown was a great thing for us. And for all different demographics, I think it's an important thing to provide housing there. I think Alex did a really nice presentation, and it's commendable. I have a few questions. What is the proposed mix of housing? You have a rental developer, Toll Brothers, who's usually a for sale developer. I'm curious what they're all planning, and if a few people have voiced concerns about the school-aged kids, if anyone has ever proposed a portion of the development being age restricted for, empty nesters, to put some of those concerns at ease.
Honey, I'm unmuted. I am.
Yes, Mayor?
Yeah, never mind. I'm sorry. I was trying to understand, but I'm good.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have a question just about kind of the finances. I think the town owns all of these properties. So as a taxpayer, I would just want to make sure that the town is maximizing the value for the taxpayers in terms of what the developers are going to compensate the town for the land. I question the retail kind of seems like a token. I think it's kind of a residential development. And then there's a few corners of these buildings that have retail, which maybe that's okay. But I'm not sure that, as an example, where the People's Street is, if you have one corner of that building being retail, if you were to carry through more retail, I think that it might be a more vibrant retail corridor, which would actually draw people there as an addition to downtown, instead of just having one retail space there where, people who live in that building or who are running to the train station stop in for a cup of coffee. And the last is just a comment. I really think Alex did a great job. I just question the architecture. Seems a little kind of industrial and modern to me. I know everyone has their own opinions, and it'll kind of be up to the council in the end. But to me, it just kind of looks a little bit like Hoboken or maybe Morristown, and doesn't look quite like the Main Street downtown in Summit that we're known for. Those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
Great. So I'm gonna try to get all of them. I'll say a few things. Age restricted housing, it hadn't been considered when we went out to public outreach. There was a lot of, you know, young professionals, workforce, which is, if you think about things like teachers, firefighters, things like that, low and moderate income people, and empty nesters that were looking for places to rent and not necessarily buy. That was what we kept hearing over and over again as the demand. We did not hear anything about age restricted housing, so it wasn't contemplated. Again, I think that we're trying to stay true and maintain that vision from everything we've heard since 2016. But again, if there's a concern about children, if there's a potential that there could be a significant impact, that will be addressed. Retail, it's kind of a delicate balance because you want to have some convenience retail for the people living there to pop in and out of. But again, the biggest goal was trying to make sure that we're creating new shoppers and diners and so on, whatnot for the downtown. So we want to make sure not to compete with that or cannibalize that. The comments heard though, and we'll keep that in mind. In terms of mix of housing, legally, we're not allowed to regulate whether or not something is rental or owner occupied. We are trying to work with the developer to have Subdistrict 2 be condos. But that is ultimately their decision and ultimately up to what the market will bear or want or see, which could very much change in the next year. But so far we've been discussing and trying to work with them to see that Subdistrict 2 is potentially condos. And then the other question was related to the city-owned property and making sure to maximize the potential revenue there and make sure the city is put in a beneficial situation there. At the bottom, at the end of the day, we're trying to do a lot of stuff with this property, but the main goal is to provide, new revenues in the long term and new cash flows for capital projects in the short term with the sale of this land and with this project and how that unfolds. So that's absolutely at the top of everyone's mind for this project. And once that financial analysis is completed, that will be available for public review when it's ready to be considered. So that'll be there. And the only thing I wanted to add is I did remember Summit Place, which is a community on Parmley Place, is 150 units. So for example, Subdistrict 3's building is smaller than that. And if you put the two together, they're about the same size. So that kind of, if you're looking for a scale or a comparison for something in Summit. Okay.
Then next is Deb.
Hi, Deb McCann again. Sorry, 4 Colt Road. It's the same question, and Annie, I don't know if I fully understood your answer about the schools. So you're saying 30 kids was a study you did in Chatham, not related to this study?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I was just giving a number. It's not the same thing. Obviously, it's a different community, but
yeah. So you're saying for 180 units or
that was
so.
225 units of market rate units that were near the train station, and we did a very considered back and forth process with the Board of Ed and found that I think it was generating 33 students, I want to say. But again, that's Chatham and in its
Right.
particular conditions. But I was just trying to give
And then I just didn't, when you said if it was more, so how does it work with the developers then? If it's more, it's mitigated, you said? I didn't know what you meant.
So I mean, the impact, so the school is going to, collect one way or another the money they need, but to provide the services to the students. But if, for example,
take the money they need from tax dollars that.
Yeah. But my only point is that if for some reason, and it would be an ongoing discussion between the city and Board of Ed and for them to resolve between themselves. But if, for example, it's projected that it's going to be 45 kids and it ends up being 100 because they have to do, they keep counts of that, that impact is quantifiable. And that would be a discussion where the city and the Board of Ed would have to figure out if there's any kind of the best way to mitigate those additional costs. We just haven't gotten there yet. I'm not trying to not give you an answer. We just haven't gotten there yet in terms of what and how that would look like.
I think the mayor has her hand raised.
Mayor, did you want to speak?
Yes, I did. Please, thank you. So I just want to clarify. I thought what you were saying was that in Chatham, it was 225 units. And with the studies, the demographic study that you did with the general in the state of New Jersey and also the local demographics in Chatham from the Board of Ed, that you came up with approximately 33 students.
Yes.
And we're looking at 180, 187. So
yeah, about
we haven't done our study yet. The number could be higher, could be lower, but most of the units are going to be 1 and 2 bedroom units, right?
Yeah. And I will say the financial consultant that the city hired is the one we worked with in Chatham. And one of the reasons that we like working with him is he actually has a lot of developers rely on kind of an outdated number that came from Rutgers many years ago to calculate school impacts, but he uses updated information. He relies on the demographic reports as analysis that come out from the school. And as far as the different people I've worked with that this is their expertise, his models are incredibly detailed and usually very accurate. So I think that we'll have a good picture soon.
So yes, we're not there yet, but we'll be very careful. Thank you.
And next is Mr. Fosgate.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, David Fosgate, 32 Laurel Avenue. Couple of questions, and I hate to draw the attention to Subdistrict 1 because I know that's not the scope of tonight's conversation, but previous callers have raised some really interesting questions to me about there being a 40,000 square foot grocer there, which is not insignificant. Actually, in my past life, I did real estate development for a grocer. And so I'm just going to be intrigued moving forward about the access points for those delivery vehicles, the frequency of those delivery vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
They have to back end to offload their product. I see an access point maybe on Railroad Avenue. I see, 18-wheelers or trucks of some size coming down Broad Street, which kind of affects and hampers the overall sort of pedestrian-friendly feel and environment. And if they're stopping at intersections right there, unsightly. So I'm thinking about that out loud. And again, whether they can offload by backing in and doing K-turns and beeping, with trucks backing up and this children's walk and kids walking around. And then secondly, so those are just concerns I'm highlighting.
Mm-hmm.
Then my question is, this 6-story parking garage, is any of that below grade or is it all 6 stories above grade? And it looks like on your site plan that it's the tallest feature of this whole development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have more? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying, So Broad Street West will be, the pinnacle of it will be a 6-story parking garage.
Well, the reason that it's placed generally where it is right now, and again, that has to be figured out, is because, the Vito Gallo Housing Authority building is 6 feet and the parking garage, 6 stories, sorry, not 6 feet, 6 stories. So it's kind of similar there and less of an impact. And it has the rail line behind it with the garage on the other side. So it's like the least impactful place. The 6 stories are all above ground. And if it is 6 stories, that's largely driven by the office parking that may be required and the final size of a grocer that is selected or chosen. So it could be less. That's the maximum right now. So I would say it's tucked away. It would be, the idea is that it would be wrapped by office from everything you'd see from Maple and Broad. And John, I'm going to defer to you on the questions related to, if you want to say anything. I know it's just comments right now about the grocer and trucks and all that. I know, again, we haven't gotten that far, but if you have anything you want to add.
No, I think the commentary was good comments, and these are things that we have been substantively considering as we've preliminarily laid out Subdistrict 1 with the candidate grocer. We do want to mitigate the pressure the deliveries would put on the site, and we look forward to sharing with you an informed study of how we can accommodate the grocer, which we understand to be of some import to the community, and also deal with the parking and access needs for the civic institutions we're also trying to serve in the same district. So here's looking forward to the next presentation when we have greater clarity on Subdistrict 1, and the individual's questions and comments will definitely be pillars of our response.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Next is Melissa. And please state your address and name.
Hi, my name is Melissa Spur. I'm at 61 Woodland Avenue. I didn't have any questions. I understand this is an evolving process. I just wanted to echo, I didn't catch the gentleman's name on Pembroke, but I had many of the same concerns and questions about how people are being drawn into this space, what's attracting them other than the one singular retail, people from the rest of the community. And also just to echo about the architectural design of the buildings being, I understand they're calling materials, inspiration from the surrounding areas, but I don't believe that they adequately are sensitive to the historic district and the village green, which abuts it. So I would just encourage kind of a revisit on the architectural design so it more seamlessly fits in with the Summit downtown. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. John, I realize we didn't touch on that before. Do you want to say anything about the retail or the draw concern? I know that you have a lot of experience with attracting good retail to your projects. So I don't know if that's something you want to just maybe touch on your experience or why or what you're thinking here.
I can. I think you answered previously to an individual's question earlier. This is a balance act. We're trying not to cannibalize existing retail. We want to inform this district with what might be valuable resources that'll serve the new residents, but also be magnetic, that'll draw populations that are non-residents of the immediate area, or non-residents of the Broad Street West district. So we have taken seriously the implications of COVID and Amazon on retail. In presenting this retail concept today, we are informing our presentation by some of the initial feedback we've had from retailers. There is interest. There's interest specifically because this district may be enough removed from the Springfield Avenue such that it will not compete with, it will not undercut or share consumers, such that the new entrants in the market would be threatened or hurt, and the existing ones wouldn't be threatened or hurt. I think we'd like to believe that the retail in Summit is fantastic, and anything we add, we hope will be on the same level. Again, I think there is interest among the retailers in being in this community. We don't want to go over the top, and I think we tend to take a very curated approach to this. So we would want to make sure that the concepts that are laid out here with retailers that spill out and help activate can be realized. So We look forward to potentially sharing some of the candidate retailers, among our next presentations. But we are attempting to be thoughtful, not overpromise and underdeliver, and I think provide for something that will enhance the Summit experience for all residents of the city and not just those who live in the Broad Street West area.
Yeah, thank you.
So one other thing I'd just add to that is I think one strength of the Broad Street West area today is that it does have great anchor institutions and in City Hall and the Y and the library. And part of what we're trying to do is kind of knit that fabric together and serve the existing users who are there today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well said.
There's a lot of traffic. Yeah. All right.
Okay, next is someone with the name JSE. If you could state your name and address, please.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Sykes-Erde. The address is 50 Canoe Brook Parkway. And I hopefully have a very easy question. I joined the meeting late and I didn't get to see all of the slides. And I just wanted to know if they would be available somewhere, perhaps on the city site, so that I could review them. Because people are mentioning, for example, the architectural design and such. And I missed that part of the presentation. So that's on me. But if you could just let me know where I'd find it, that would be great.
Yeah, it will be posted. This presentation will be posted on the city's website under the Broad Street West tab.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah, everything's there.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Through.
And then I have one last raised hand. That's Dap McCann. I'll make you a panelist.
I'm so sorry. I got muted before I finished my second question, which was just the People Street, the end. So it's really cars, right? And then you said it can be closed off, but is that the only way people who live in that building to get in and out of their parking garage? It seems that's the only way. So that's my one question. And then just a comment in general. I appreciate all the work you guys have done, and I look forward to further dialogue, but just a general comment is from a resident who's been here 20 years. Just my general thoughts are it's a lot. It's too tall, so just kind of, everyone's been asking lots of polite questions, but just a general comment of, if you're wondering where people's heads are, I think it's tall and it's big. So, that's something I'll be looking to understand more as time goes on. But the main question just about the People Street, and that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Sorry, we didn't get to your last question. I'll let Alex kind of walk real quickly about the People Street and the movement in and out of the garage. But just on the size and the architecture and all those kind of details, we were very considerate of the buildings that are surrounding it, the areas that are around it. There's some things to keep in mind. You have the 6-story postmodern building that is the modern Summit Housing Authority. The library itself is more modern than traditional. The library should shine as it is as a traditional piece, and we really tried to make sure that we complement but also enhanced. It is going to be a delicate process, but the architecture is based off of a lot of public outreach where people chose, and we started out with 30 different types of building types. And then we eventually got down to 6 through voting. And it was a very significant process. So I just wanted to let you all know that these weren't pulled from anywhere. If you go back to the redevelopment plan, you'll see almost these described exactly. And in terms of size, I think that the buildings themselves are similar in size to similar uses in town. There is not a grocery store that is convenient, so that's probably a change. And a larger commercial office tenant is not, we have smaller ones, but not a bigger headquartered one, which may or may not be what ends up there. But those are two things that might be introduced that there isn't a precedent for already that we use to kind of build off of. So I would just say, take a look at them in a master plan and the redevelopment plan, and everything is on the website. You can see every conversation that we've had, and I think almost every presentation we've given. But I believe that we as the planners, that's our responsibility to make sure to translate what the public says and how this committee responds to those and gives us direction, translates into a really good design that is appropriate. And we hear you. We know that there's concerns about that. There's reasons that, you know, we have the open space over here instead of over here. There's a reason that the parking garage is kind of tucked back. Something to consider is where the residential building is in Subdistrict 3, you know, where the Chestnut Street lot is right now. There's a beautiful view up a very tall hill to see St. Teresa's itself. It actually like just ends right where the parking lot is, the vista, which is where we have that new open space. But the site itself is kind of depressed to everything around it. And right now, it's not, it doesn't have a presence itself. And so there's a few things to play off of, but there's a lot of opportunities for creativity. And I would just ask that, you know, if you're concerned or wondering where some of these ideas for architecture and size and layout and so on came from, it's all there. Not that we can't still talk about it and have conversations, but I do think there's been a very strong effort towards that. Is there anything else?
Yeah, at this moment, there are no raised hands, but maybe just give everyone a last opportunity to raise their hand, ask a question. But not seeing any.
The only thing I'll add is that I believe it's already been created, but it's, what was it, BSW at cityofsummit.org is an email address that is active. If you'd like to send comments at a later time, we will be receiving those to review. Again, this will be posted. Let me just confirm all the places. The recorded meeting will be on YouTube and on the city website, so you'll also have all the question and answer. Maybe to keep things a little shorter, we'll also just post both of the presentations, not in a video format, so you can look at them. But really appreciate you all sitting through this with us and waiting so patiently to have your questions answered. This has been a really great dialogue, just as all the other meetings that I've participated in Summit have been. And I want to thank the mayor for helping us kick this off and organize this, as well as the rest of the committee to get to this point. They've been amazing resources to kind of refine everything that you see here. And lastly, the development team, thank you for sharing this. And we look forward to getting additional feedback and coming back to you hopefully in a couple of months with some more information.
Thank you to you guys. This has been a great conversation. We look forward to more.
Great.
I just want to say one.
Oh, yes, Mayor, sorry.
No worries. Sorry, I'm just jumping in here. I just want to thank everybody who's on the development team, council members, residents, planning board, staff members. It's been pretty incredible. And obviously we've worked hard. I also wanted to assure the residents, I will tell you that going into this, I wasn't really sure how this process would go and how things would work with the redevelopers that we chose. But I want to assure you that this is not a completely done deal. Yes, we're very far, you know, we're at a certain point where we've got some very strong concepts. But these gentlemen and ladies have been incredibly resilient and receptive to our questions and concerns over the last year and a half. We've had multiple meetings where we've said, how about this, how about that? And we've raised questions and they've looked at this, quite frankly, sometimes as if, oh my God, are you serious? But have come back with very creative solutions. So I really don't want anyone who's listening tonight and watching to think that what you heard, your questions are being ignored or just not paid any attention to. Everyone will take serious look at your questions. Some were answered. Some are the things that we will have to take back and think about. This is a process, and we're in this together. We want to do what's best for our city, and I think we've chosen the right redevelopers, the right planners, the right professionals, both legal and financial to help us get to where we need to be. It's a big step, but I've lived in this town for over 30 years, and they've been talking about doing the Broad Street development for over 30 years, and now's the time. So I just am very grateful for all the support, and everyone just needs to, have some faith. So that's all I want to say.
Yep. Great. Thank you so much, Mayor. All right. We're going to let you all go. Have a good night. Thank you for your attendance, and we will be in touch soon.